Good evening, everyone. Welcome to my patio. I'm Rusty Blackwood, and this is video 10 that I'm embarking on. This isn't going to be the longest video that I've done because it is already 27 minutes past 7, and the light, I've noticed the last few nights, does not seem to stay very, very long. When it gets around 8 o'clock, especially, I would say 8:15, definitely by 8:30, there's just a curtain comes right over the sky, and it instantly goes from light to dark. And so it doesn't leave a lot of time in the evenings now, but this is August 26th. This is the last week of August, and it is getting late in the season, and late in the summer, actually, really. Um, this coming Saturday is my granddaughter Carson's wedding, and so it's such an exciting time for everybody. This is a very hectic week, as you can imagine. Everybody getting everything taken care of, those very, very last minute details, and all the making sure that all the ins and outs are taken care of, and hopefully everything is as organized as it possibly can be. So fingers crossed, everybody. So far, the weather forecast in Niagara here is calling for a sunny day, a little on the cool side, maybe only about 21 um, Celsius. So that's maybe just a very early 70s in Fahrenheit. We have this ridiculous metric system here in Canada, and I have to admit, I've never really learned it. I get by because I have comparisons between the two. I still have Celsius and Fahrenheit, and thank heavens my speedometer on my dashboard of my car is still in miles, and of course kilometers are there as well. So I've got both, and but what are you supposed to do? I'm old school. I went to school back when it was inches and feet and pounds and ounces, not milligrams. And you know, to me, there was no need to change. And when you grow up learning a certain way, it can be difficult to change to a different method. The kids in school, I mean, for well over a decade, um, I should say a generation, if not more, um, you just begin with the metric system from day one. So, I mean, for them, it's no big deal. But for those of us who can't claim to be just the latest generation, um, it can be a bit stressful and trying at times. So tonight, I thought that I would read a story from my children's short story collection, Through the Minds of Innocence, um, and uh, and see how you enjoy one of my very favorite things. I love lighthouses. I always have adored lighthouses. I can't really say why. Um, I just find them fascinating. I mean, they are a lifesaver. That's what they're there for anybody on the water in peril, for direction at night, and for warning ships at sea or even in the lakes that are getting too close to the shore, getting too close to rocks. That's what they're there for. And but I've admired them for as long as I can remember. I just love lighthouses. I visited quite a few throughout my life. I think my favorite probably is the Peggy's Cove Lighthouse in Nova Scotia. Um, a fantastic lighthouse to visit, and it was when I was last there. It was in 1990 on a trip to the East Coast that was sort of last minute, and I think it was one of the best trips I've ever been on in my life. Um, my youngest son, Jason, at that time was only 14, and uh, and my now estranged husband, Doug, and I just decided really at the last minute for holidays that year, for the last week of July and the first week of August, that we were going to go to the East Coast, which is what we did. And and so we sort of planned out a few things of where we were going to go and what we wanted to see, and one of them was to make a trip to Peggy's Cove, and so that I could see the lighthouse. And so we did, and at that time when we were there, the lighthouse was a post office, and you could actually send mail from there. And I assume the residents of Peggy's Cove, that's where they went to get their mail. But I had some postcards fixed up to send to people back home here, to sort of, share your experiences with them, and let them sort of share in the experience that you're having. You got to remember, this was in 1990. There was no cell phones. There was no text messaging. There was no phones and cameras, or cameras and phones, I should say, and except a portable camera that you had. But so it was very off the top of our head, and it was so pleasurable. I can still recall it. I can still see it when I close my eyes. I can still see it, the saltwater spray coming up. Oh, it was just fantastic. So if you ever get a chance, visit Canada and go to Nova Scotia on the east coast of Canada and visit Peggy's Cove. Now, with that, I'm going to put my glasses on here. I'm going to have a drink of green iced tea. Cheers to you. Homemade, by the way. I did okay. So in this children's collection, as I've said before, a lot of these stories that's in this book are based on my childhood, experiences that I had as a child, and just tweaking them up, making them a little bit more interesting. But this particular story, actually, I mean, it's fictional. It's just from my imagination, and but it centers around a lighthouse, and so I hope you enjoy it. It is called Keeper of the Light. Located high above the ocean, proud and defiant in nature, stood the Castle Cove Lighthouse. It was old, made of fieldstone and painted white with a fading red top which had weathered many storms. The older people of Castle Cove, who had remembered the lighthouse from their own childhood, said it had stood on the cliff for over 100 years, always there protecting the ships which often sailed dangerously close to the jagged rocks at the base far below. If any one of these ships had ever run aground on these dreaded rocks, they would surely be lost. But the constant glow of the light high above never ceased to do its important job. That is, until one stormy night. Nathaniel Marcus was the present keeper of the lighthouse. His job was the most important one in all of Castle Cove, for it was up to him to see that the light never went out. He knew how important it was, as well as what it would mean should he fail in his plight, and it never once crossed his mind that he would ever fail in his ability to do so. Nathaniel was not the first keeper of the light, but he had looked after the ancient lighthouse for many, many years. The adults of the community always liked him. They thought him fearless, brave, and competent. But the children of the cove thought him strange. It was no wonder they did, because Nathaniel did not care for children, and he never kept his feelings a secret. He was known to shout at those who ventured too close, telling them to stay away, and if he ever caught even one of them snooping around trying to find a way in, he would make them very sorry. It is a well-known fact that children are curious. After all, it is through curiosity that one learns about things. But they should have listened closer to Nathaniel's warning. They even scoffed at it, never once thinking he would ever act upon his threats should they step where they shouldn't. So they continued to creep around the old lighthouse, especially when they knew the keeper was not present. 12-year-old Andy Barlow, one of the older children in the cove, thought himself far more fearless than Nathaniel Marcus. He also considered himself the leader of a group he liked to call the Cove Buccaneers. It was always said he could find trouble regardless of how well it was hidden, and he never proved the saying wrong. Unfortunately, the other children thought him an impressive fellow and followed him wherever he went, which often found them partaking in things they should not have been doing. One of these things was finding a way to get into the guarded lighthouse. "I think we'll try tonight," said Andy, his deep blue eyes twinkling like stars in the sky. Sid Brown, a tall, thin member of the group, replied, "I really don't think that would be wise, Andy. Besides, it's just you and me tonight. I told you the others couldn't make it, so I don't know why you insist on doing this." "Why not?" questioned the Buccaneer leader, his eyes continuing to twinkle with mischief. "Well, you know how much old man Marcus likes us," stated Sid. "Yeah," admitted Andy, "about as much as an elephant likes a mouse." "Then maybe we should just keep our distance and stay away," replied Sid. "You know as well as I it'll only bring trouble we don't need." "Not if someone stands watch below," stated Andy, his eyes watching the sky above. "And who are you going to get to do that? Everyone knows old man Marcus is never gone from the lighthouse for very long, and besides it looks like a storm is coming. I think we had better just head for home," suggested Sid, trying his best to put a damper on the entire idea. The two boys stood there, not saying a word, but it was plain to see by the look in Andy's eyes that his idea of sneaking into the lighthouse was not going away any time soon, regardless of his friend's lack of cooperation. If anything, it made Andy that much more determined to carry out his plan. "Well, Brown, you do what you want, but I'm going to the lighthouse." Sid's eyes widened as he said, "Are you totally crazy, Andy? Look at the sky. The wind is already picking up, and the old dude's bound to be back before we even get over there." "Yeah, I know, but if we move fast enough, we just might beat him to it. Besides, he's always hollering at us about something, thinking he's got the better of us all the time, and I think he gets his kicks out of treating us like he does," stated Andy, inching forward, not waiting for a reply, as he added, "For once, don't you want to get the better of him?" Sid said not a word. He could tell his friend was bound and determined to have his way, and even though they were partners in crime, if he really was a true friend to Andy, he would go with him, even if he thought better of it. "Wait up, Andy," he called, sprinting forward. The two boys moved closer to the lighthouse. The glow of the light looked somewhat dimmer than usual, but it could still be seen. The storm was moving closer. It was only a matter of time before it struck, and there was no way of knowing how intense it would become. That would be left to fate. Storms could often be bad, hurling waves 10 feet high into the solid rocks below the cliff. Nathaniel had heard the sounds of the approaching storm and was on his way to the lighthouse. He had been in the village gathering supplies, for he knew it might be days before he could again venture away from his post. The trip into the village had been needed, for the bulb within the mirrored light had been showing signs of burning out, and above all else this could not be let happen. He already had to use the spare one he kept under lock and key a few months earlier, but had not been able to replace it until now. But he had to hurry. The storm was fast closing in. Andy and Sid had already arrived at the lighthouse, but found the entrance door located at the base locked. This didn't surprise them, for they expected as much. Still, this would not stop Andy from carrying through with his plan to get inside. Sid crouched low to the ground, scanning the area for the first sign of Nathaniel. But so far, so good, for the old man was nowhere to be seen. Still, he felt nervous. He knew they should not be there, and should they be discovered, it was anybody's guess as to what would happen. The wind was now howling its complaints as rain started to fall. Far below, they could hear the waves already smashing against the rocks, and as they looked out to sea, they could detect a ship rising and falling on the huge waves. At first, they were not sure of the direction it was going, but when the lightning flashed, they could see it was headed straight for the cliffs. As frightened as they felt, they couldn't help feeling somewhat at ease because they knew the glow of the lighthouse lamp would shine bright, deterring the ship away. But suddenly, something was not right. The light was no longer shining. Everything had gone dark. Before the boys realized what was happening, they jumped up, but as they did, they plowed straight into Nathaniel Marcus, knocking him down with a thud. "Run!" yelled Andy, no longer the brave buccaneer leader he pictured himself to be. "My foot is caught under Marcus," Sid yelled back. "What are you kids doing here?" questioned Nathaniel in a disgusted tone, trying his best to climb to his feet. Nothing. We saw the ship out there and the light go out, and you didn't seem to be around," stated Sid in a nervous voice. "We were only trying to find you." "Tell it to a body that'll believe you," snapped Nathaniel. "Get off me so I can get the lights going." The storm was growing worse. Between flashes of lightning, the ship could be seen trying its best to navigate the turbulent water. Without warning, it began to veer straight toward the cliff, but the ancient lighthouse was of no use, for there was no light to guide them away from the rocks. If light could not soon be detected, it would only be a matter of minutes before the ship would slam into the unforgiving rocks. "Let me up!" screamed Nathaniel. "Mr. Marcus, let us help," called Andy, but the wind snatched his voice away. "Andy, the ship is coming!" hollered Sid. "You're in my way!" yelled Nathaniel, pushing the frightened boys aside and lunging for the lighthouse door. The old man fiddled with the key until it finally found its mark. The door swung open, and the old man barreled inside, followed by the Cove buccaneers. Up the circular stairs they went, as fast as their legs could carry them. But as they rose, the old man had to stop to catch his wind. It was proving to be too much for him. The trio knew only too well what would happen in a very short amount of time if the light was not lit. Someone had to get it going. "Give me the bulb!" exclaimed Andy, holding fast to the handrail as not to lose his balance. "It's not your job," replied the old man fiercely. "It doesn't matter, Mr. Marcus. I can climb faster than you. Let me do this," pleaded Andy. "Make sure the switch is off before you screw the new bulb in, otherwise the electrical surge will be too great and the new bulb will blow," explained Nathaniel, holding the bulb out to the boy's quivering hand. "Take heed, boy. It's the only one I have, as the other got busted when you knocked me down." Like a shot, Andy was at the top, while his friend assisted the old lighthouse keeper on the stairs. For a brief moment, Andy wondered if he could successfully carry out his mission, especially when he lost hold of the new bulb and it fell to the floor. His breath actually caught in his throat. "Oh no, it could not be broken. It can't," Andy thought in despair. His fingers grasped hold of the bulb, and he let out a giant sigh of relief when he realized it was all right. Like a shot, he had the old one out, and with the help of the lightning flashes he could see to get the new one into place. He reached for the switch just as Nathaniel and Sid made it to the top. The room was instantly flooded with light so bright the trio dropped to the floor with hands shielding their eyes. Had they acted in time? The lighthouse keeper quickly reached for the horn, usually reserved for intense fog. At that point, he figured he had nothing to lose. He had to do whatever he could to signal the oncoming ship and hope it could somehow veer away. He held fast to the horn while the boys peered out toward the sea. Another flash of lightning pinpointed the position of the ship, which still appeared to be on course with the cliff above it and before it. Another blast of the lighthouse horn. The intense lamp continued to turn around and around, its brilliant rays engulfing the ship with light as bright as day. The trio stood with mouths open, bracing themselves for the sudden impact below, but to their immense surprise, nothing happened. They had been sure the ship would crash upon the rocks, but when the next lightning flash lit the sky, they could see the ship skimming past the jagged rocks. They had been successful. Between the three of them working as a team, they had managed to signal the ship, saving it from certain doom. The next morning found the Cove buccaneers at the lighthouse, where they had brought breakfast for a welcoming lighthouse keeper. It was like a miracle had taken place the night before, for Nathaniel was happy to see them, and the boys had nothing but praise for their newfound friend. They even had to admit they found him fun. Maybe it was because they finally understood him. But from that day on, the Cove buccaneers were always welcomed at the lighthouse and never had cause to misbehave again. The previous night must have been a miracle in more ways than one, for Nathaniel Marcus realized he did like children after all, and always made it a point to spend happy times with them whenever they happened by his lighthouse. So, all's well that ended well. And I ask your endurance during that story for the noise going on in the yard over the way, banging away. I realize he must be doing some renovating to his house, but he can obviously hear me, and he can tell that I am talking. He doesn't know whether I'm talking to somebody or whether I'm reading, whatever I'm doing, but that shows the arrogance of so many people in this day and age. All they think about is themselves and what they want to do. They're not going to be interrupted. So, in that frame of mind, I'm not going to be interrupted either. So, I hope you did enjoy that story from my children's short story collection, Through the Eyes of Innocence. I showed the cover to you the other night, but I'm going to do it again because this is an exclusive cover that was shot specifically for this book by my eldest granddaughter, Carson, who has got an excellent eye, is a fantastic photographer, does a tremendous amount of my publicity shoots, and so I'm sure if she could shoot her own wedding, she would, but that's being undertaken by another very, very competent and very talented photographer. At this point, I don't recall his name, but he did their engagement photos and did a lot of walk through the woods, you know, with the intended bride and groom, that sort of thing, and just makes for a delightful group of memories for Carson and Garrett to look back at one day. And before they know it, the years will go by, and uh, and they will have all those memories to look back at. So this isn't going to be the longest video tonight because, as I say, the light is not the brightest, it's not the best, but I take what I get when I do these impromptu videos. Impromptu is the inoperative word there, because you just don't know what you're going to get, and all you can do is hope for the best and make the best of the situation and do the best you can. As I say, this is the 10th video. I was uncertain as to whether I was going to leave it at 10 or whether I was going to do an even dozen. So I think, because this is a short one, or shorter one than what they've been, I'm going to continue on and do 2 more to make the even dozen. And so I hope that you will tune in and check them out as well. I thank each one of you that have been following this series, and I thank Lion Media for promoting this series. It certainly brought a lot more views and a lot more eyes to the videos where they may not normally get that many views or have that happen. Sometimes it's really left up to chance as to what happens, and you just do the best you can. Um, I'm not one for using YouTube for monetary gain. I know a lot of people that post videos, that's why they do them. For me, I wanted to do this series, and YouTube seemed to be the best spot to put the videos, even though they are available on my official website and on my Facebook as well. So I mean, you can check them out wherever you would like. But if you come to see them on YouTube, I mean, that is the base of where they are. So each time you view it, the view count goes to YouTube. So I hope that you continue to share them on. I hope you will comment them. It gives me a little bit of feedback as to how these videos are being perceived, and if what I'm doing is being accepted in the way that I hope they are. And please subscribe to my YouTube channel and see if we can get the subscribers count up. So I'm going to say goodnight for now, and I wish you a very, very pleasant evening. Do take care. Enjoy the rest of your evening, and tune back in with me to get on the patio with me again for video 11, which will be coming probably Thursday this week. I can't promise, but probably. And then I will try to do my very last video of the first week of September. Maybe it'll be a bit more quiet out here by then. So have a good night. God's blessings to each of you. I thank you, and good night for now.